Hey there, listeners. This is Terry Cowley, your host of the R.M.Williams Outback podcast. Thanks so much for being here and welcome to Season 3.
G'day, my name's Ken Eastwood and I'm the Associate Editor of R.M.Williams Outback magazine. In the February-March 2025 issue of Outback magazine, I've written a major feature on fire in Australia, looking at everything from campfires to fire as a major land management tool. In conducting that research, I came across our guest today, Tim and Sally Haslam, from a farm in Popanyinning in WA. In many ways, their story is a harrowing nightmare, showing the awfulness of fire at its most dangerous. But it's also a story of great resilience, of community spirit, and the power of healing. Just a warning, some people may find some of the details in this story disturbing. Over to Tim and Sally. Welcome, and thanks for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Can you start off by telling us a bit about your farm in Popanyinning? What's it like? What's there? What do you do on the property?
So we're a mixed farm. We farm about 14,500 acres, of which some of that is leased. So we put in about 10,000 acres of crop, and there are about 12,000 sheep. We're in a Mediterranean climate in the south-west of Western Australia, and our farm is really no different to any other in the area, really.
Fantastic. And the size of the property?
I talk in acres, so it's about 6,000 hectares.
So the crops you're generally growing are, there's barley and wheat and those sorts of things?
Well, we don't grow wheat, but we grow barley, lupins and oats, and we also grow oats for export hay.
Fantastic. And can you explain for those of us who don't do a lot of cropping, why there is a danger in summer of, when you're on the header and you're pulling in a crop, why there's a danger of fire?
Well, when we're harvesting, all the crops have to be mature. So by mature, I mean they can't have any moisture in them. There's an enormous amount of dry fuel on the ground. And when you've got a header, which has got so many moving parts, the risk is that you can have a fire, either from some mechanical, for a mechanical reason, due to friction, or a bearing may fail, a belt may rub, and as a consequence of that, there's a fire. Now, the fire that happened on the 20th of December was actually because a part of the header failed and it got thrown out the back. And when I say a part, I mean it was a piece of hot metal. It got thrown out the back of the header and caused the fire. So the advantage that we had in that particular situation is there wasn't a fire on the machine itself. It was separate to the machine. So we were a little bit fortunate in that particular instance.
This is in the lead up to Christmas of 2023. So you were bringing in the barley crop and you were out there on the header on your own. And so describe sort of what happened over the next few minutes there.
Right. Well, I actually wasn't on my own. We have a chaser bin driver, and that chaser bin comes alongside the header. Once we've reaped a full header tank load, this tractor pulling a trailer will come alongside and get the grain, and then he will transfer it to some mother bins. So I was on my own in that particular instance because the chaser bin had left me and gone up to the mother bin. But there are usually more than one person in the paddock. So it was the 20th of December. We were approaching the end of our harvesting program, and we were harvesting barley, and the header threw a hot piece of metal out the back of the header. I saw the fire in a mirror, in a rear vision mirror, and I went down and got a fire unit. I was also a telephone and also on a two-way, alerting people to the fact that there was a fire so that then people could come and assist. Obviously, I got back to the fire. I was the first person on the fire ground simply because I was in the paddock. When I got back to where the fire started, it had actually gotten into my next door neighbour's place. So I had to cut several fences, and then I started to fight the fire. And I was at the head of the fire trying to arrest its progress. And it wasn't a particularly bad day, but there were gusts of wind. And just in an instant, all I saw in front of me was a picture of orange, which is flames. And I panicked. Now, I think I can be excused for panicking, but I made some mistakes subsequently. But when I saw this wall of flame, the ute I was in, it's a four-wheel drive ute, I immediately turned left to try and evade the flames, and the ute got stuck. But what I didn't realise is it also had a flat tyre. And so then I just couldn't move, and the fire was either on me or under the ute. And the mistake I made was I just reacted. I got out of the ute and I ran, and I took one or two steps and I tripped over. And so that had me land in the fire. And so obviously I immediately stood up. But the problem was when I tripped over, my boot came off. So that meant I was standing in the fire and I just froze. I don't know why I froze, but I just froze. And I don't believe there were many flames around then, but there was radiant heat. And I can't tell you how long I was standing there, but I would suggest less than a minute. And then the smoke started to clear, and there was a ute in front of me, and it was one of our employees. He's a long time. He's worked for us for 16 years, most delightful bloke, and he picked me up. Now, when I say pick me up, I couldn't walk, so he had to physically manhandle me and get me into the front of this ute. And he then proceeded to drive about 4 kilometres up to our house, and we have an outdoor shower. As we were travelling up to the house, we passed another ute, another firefighter. He's a young lad, he's a next door neighbour, and his mother is one of the local ambos. So we told him to get hold of his mother. My injuries were quite graphic. I was holding my hands up and there was just skin dripping off them. So, it was a little bit confronting. And this young lad rang his mother and she said, don't, and this poor lady, she was 2 towns away having her hair done. And anyway, she said, don't ring me, ring 000. Now, the benefit of ringing 000 is that phone call is then pinpointed and the emergency services know your exact location. The 000 operator asked him what injuries there were, and this lad gave a fairly graphic description. Fortunately for me, the 000 operator had the presence of mind to immediately put a helicopter in the sky, and that was from Bunbury, which is several hundred kilometres from Perth. We're possibly several hundred kilometres from Perth, but we would be 250 kilometres from Bunbury. Anyway, so then our employee took me up to our house, sat me in a chair while he had to manhandle me out of the ute into a chair and turned the shower on.
Wow. And can I ask, Sally, in all of this, like, when was the first time that you heard that something was wrong?
So one thing he didn't say was that Noel put water on him as soon as he found him as well. So that's critical. But no, I was in Narrogin. I worked full time in Narrogin, which is half an hour away. And I was just in Coles and my daughter rang to say there's a fire on our farm. So I thought, I'll get water. I know the drill, blah, blah, blah. And then I heard these ambulances screaming out and I thought, oh, no, it's not going to be good. And then Noel, the workman, rang and said he's burnt and it's worse than the burn he had a couple of years ago. So I knew there was something happening, but I didn't know the extent. So luckily for me, I arrived when all the first aid, the volunteer ambos were there, the paramedics were there and the chopper was on the way. So it was pretty much under control when I got there. So they kept me away. It wasn't nice. So I just got towels and, just got what I needed. And I took photos. I just thought Tim would, we needed to know what was going on. So, yeah, until the chopper came, I was just a sort of bystander.
Wow. And Tim, your pain level at this stage, were you still in shock so you weren't feeling much pain or it was very painful?
Ken, I've been in shock for about 13 months. No, so yes, I was in shock. But if I could just go back to something that Sally said, indeed our employee Noel, who brought me up in the ute, he actually had a fire hose dribbling water all over me on the trip back to the house, which was fantastic. When Sally arrived, it was pretty convincing because there was a huge plume of smoke to the south of us, which was obviously the fire. and there are all these ambulance and first aid people. So, yes, I was in shock. I was sitting in this chair, and I can remember just the action of my hands going backwards and forwards because I was in shock. And I do recall after a while, probably 20 minutes, the actions of my hands got slower because I got more buggered. I also recall towards the end of being in the shower, just being terribly cold because by then there was a bit of breeze. But yes, I was certainly in shock. I was extremely grateful for Noel, our employer. He was with me the whole time, talking to me, sort of keeping my mind off the subject. He was absolutely sensational.
Fantastic. And Sally, when you did arrive and you saw the condition of Tim, like how were you faring yourself then?
I didn't know where this was going to go, and I certainly didn't know the extent of his injuries. All I could see through all the people was his foot, which looked completely without skin to me. And it was several months later that I found out that he actually did have skin on the top of his foot, but not on the bottom. So I assume all that gory bit was from his legs. No, I felt really sick. And the three local ambos, they kept me there for a while and just looked after me after the chopper had left. But yeah, it was very confronting, and I knew it was going to be life-changing, and it was.
We'll come back to that story in a minute and about what happened then and the treatment that you have received since then and where things are at. But I wanted to just cut in and look at the community of Popanyinning as they found out about the incident over the coming days. It sounds like they really came together to try to help out as much as they could.
They did. I probably know more than Tim because he was out of it by then. So to put it in context, Dougal and Abby, who are...
Dougal is our son.
Who's our son, youngest son, and they running the farm effectively. They'd had little Lexi 4 days earlier and their second child, daughter, and they came home that morning and Tim had gone in and met Lexi, and then, it all went to shit. But the community, of course, with a fire, everyone turns up, and it was pre-Christmas and we had many, many people. And from that, because we only had 2 or 3 days of harvest left, the community, Steve Lynham, got everyone together and came together and took the harvest off on the 28th of December. So we are eternally grateful to them. You never want to be in that position, but when you are, it is incredible. Yeah.
And Ken, I think the principal reason why there's this huge body of help is because, but for the grace of God, it could be on your farm or it could involve you. And if you turn up to someone else's fire, there's a very good chance they'll turn up to yours. But when these people turned up to take the harvest off, Sally mentioned a little earlier that she was taking photographs all the time. And the photographs of me in the shower, getting in the chopper, the harvesting operation with the working bee has been extremely good for me because I just didn't know what happened and how huge the help was. So it's been very good for me. The other thing about it, and we'll probably talk to this shortly, but the photographs she took, she had printed off, and they were in my hospital bedroom, and which actually gave me an opportunity to talk to the staff about what I do and what happened and so on. But anyway, we'll get to that.
So let's now go back to the chopper arriving, and it took you to the Fiona Stanley Hospital, which is in Perth. So explain a bit of the process from there and what happened in terms of your treatment from then on.
So I said to you that the O operator had the presence of mind to get a helicopter in the sky straight away. I'm quite sure that the fact that was done, and also that I had water put on me so early, they were critical in my survival, but also the rate at which I recovered. Because had a helicopter not landed on our little farm, I would have been put in an ambulance, taken to the local town, which is about 40 minutes away. Then they would have assessed me, and then they would have either got a helicopter or it would have taken considerably longer. We estimate from the time of being burned to the time landing on top of Fiona Stanley was only about 2.5 hours. Had I been put in an ambulance and taken to the local town, it might have been 4 or 5 hours. So the fact that the helicopter came here was critical. Initially, 3 local ambulance personnel turned up. And then there were some professional paramedics from our local town, which is 40 minutes away. And then the paramedic on the helicopter, he just took over. And Sally could tell you what happened, but yeah, he took over and directed things from there.
And he also drugged Tim. So, these wonderful drugs that take them out of reality. So he was chirpy when he got into the chopper. Yeah, I just wish they'd sort of shared it around. But as soon as he got to Fiona Stanley, they rang me. I was on my way to Perth, and they said, look, he's going to be in an induced coma, so no point in you being here. So I kept coming to Perth and then came home and got things organised. But he was on a ventilator for 3 days and in induced coma for 10. So in ICU, and then shifted to the burns ward. Yeah.
Okay, and so treatment from then, I know you've had multiple operations, you've had to wear those compression bandages for many, many months, and I can see your arm when you hold it up that you're still wearing them on parts of you today. Yep. So describe that treatment and how effective it was, I guess.
I'm in awe of the treatment. So obviously I don't remember anything of ICU. I do, however, remember getting on the helicopter, and when I got on the helicopter, there was a Indian Test cricketer. Yeah, that was actually me out of it. But
yes.
Well, they took a culture of my skin when I first got into ICU, and from that they will produce the plastic skin.
And the spray-on cell skin, yeah.
And my upper torso is just a patchwork of skin grafts.
Donor sites.
I beg your pardon, donor sites. So I should also mention I was burnt wherever I didn't have clothing. I had a fairly light cotton shirt, short sleeve shirt on, but that was even still enough to protect me. So wherever I wasn't covered, I'm burnt. And my left foot is still not very good. So I had the skin grafts, and my pain management has been pretty good. But when they used to take these dressings off every second day, and then as they became a little bit better, they'd do it every third day. But when they removed the dressings, oh my goodness, the pain was just indescribable, as they're pulling these dressings off injured areas. And also the other problem I had in hospital, because of the drugs, I hallucinated. And, at one stage I was sleeping on a swag on the Nullarbor, and I was participating in a surfing event representing WA. So, and I was also in a military installation at one stage in Deniliquin. So whenever the lights went out, I just hated the nights. And I didn't have the cognitive skills at that stage to put together, how come I'm in a swag on the Nullarbor at night, but I'm in a hospital ward during the day? I didn't have the capacity to be able to do that, but the hallucinations were really scary. At one stage, a helicopter landed so the burns unit at Fiona Stanley is on the 4th floor, and above that is the helicopter pad. And I heard this helicopter coming down, and all the brickwork started to fall away, and the room was just full of dust, because the roof was starting to crumble around me. And at one stage, a bloke crawled out from under the roof, and I wanted to yell out, but I couldn't. So it just gives you some indication of how scary that was. That was not pleasant.
So the treatment over the next few months, I know you've spoken to me before about how wonderful the Fiona Wood Foundation in particular has been. Can you explain their work and how that impacted your treatment?
Over the course of that time, their recovery techniques is just extraordinary, and that has it has solely been because of Fiona Wood. Following the Bali bombing, she really came to the fore, and the techniques and procedures they have in place are just extraordinary. Burns unit in Fiona Stanley is extraordinary. Nobody wears rank. You don't know who the junior nurse is, you don't know who the physio, you don't know who the surgeon is. And they just speak to each other with unbelievable respect, which is the way it should be. But, quite often a surgeon will turn to the junior nurse and say, what did we do with Tim yesterday? What's going to happen today? And they worked extremely well. So I've had 10 operations, principally to repair scar tissue and also on my foot. My hands are not very good still. I still don't have a lot of ability with my hands, but it's infinitely better than we ever thought it was going to be. And I've had 10 operations in 12 months, and I've got at least another 4 to go that we know of. But there's a fair chance that 10 years down the track, they might have to do another operation to release the scar, to give me more mobility or that sort of thing. That's just the way it is. Now I'm rambling a bit. What did you ask?
I was asking about that treatment, and particularly the Fiona Wood Foundation.
Fiona Wood Foundation, it has been put together in order to raise funds for the research that Fiona and her team are doing. And it requires donations, which is it's a bit unfortunate that they require that to do their work. I have been doing quite a bit of work with the foundation. At one stage, I met the Governor-General, and the reason why she was there was because Fiona Woods asked her if she would be the patron, and she accepted, most graciously. And so by having a high-profile patron, it probably gives them more ability to raise funds. I have also given several speeches for the foundation, just to tell them, as I have done with you, what they do and so on. I've also done quite a few talks to local fire brigades, and that they have been absolutely fantastic for me, because I've had to face up to the mistakes I made in front of my peers. I've had to work through what happened, and I'm very fortunate. I can compartmentalise things. If I went to your place, Ken, because your house was on fire, I wouldn't associate it with the fire I had. I can just deal with that. I don't connect the two, so I'm very fortunate. With respect to these talks at the local fire brigades, I seem to connect with particularly the young people, which is fantastic, but hopefully they will get something out of it. I said to you, the mistake I made is I didn't sit in my ute for 1 or 2 seconds and think, what are my options here? And indeed, after doing that, I might have thought, I'll run. But it's important, if you're in a really sticky situation, if you're in an accident of some description, just sit there for 1 or 2 seconds and say, what are my options? It could be life-changing.
What a great lesson to learn. Look, to finish up, I know that you've said that with your injuries, you can still do everything on the farm. You're just a bit slower now. And I know you've been back on the header this summer, and there was even another fire while you're on the header. How did you feel being back in that situation again?
Well, bear in mind, I had, shortly before that, I'd been telling these fire brigades, just take 1 or 2 seconds. While I was harvesting, I would say that I would, each day, and I'm serious when I say this, I'd think, the wind's coming from that quarter. This is where I'll go if there's a fire. And there was a fire. It was on the front of the header. And I had my son in the other header screaming at me on the two-way, get out, get out. But I was able to put that aside, and I thought for 1 or 2 seconds what I did was I pointed the header into the wind so that the flames and the smoke were going away from me. I was able to get down off the header. Dougal turned up with a couple of fire extinguishers and just sort of dampened the fire. He was never going to put it out with fire extinguishers, but he dampened them down. Because because the header was pointed into wind, we could actually separate the front from the header. We had time to do that. And then one of our chaser bin drivers with a fire unit and it was put out. So to answer your question, because I thought for 1 or 2 seconds, had I not, it might have been a different outcome. But yeah, and look, driving a header this year was fantastic for me because I got my mojo back. I felt as though I was contributing. I felt as though I was doing something. I'd get up, early in the morning and I'd want to go. And so that was really critical to my ongoing rehabilitation. I do find it difficult to get into machinery. You said a little earlier that I can do all my jobs. I find them difficult and I'm fairly slow at doing them. But my really good friends tell me that I wasn't that quick to start with. But look, I'm doing everything, and there is no way I'd be talking to you today about all this if it wasn't for Sally. I'm not too sure how someone with the extensive injuries that I had, how they would get on without someone helping them. I presume you'd have to go to an institution of something. So I have enormous thanks for Fiona Woods and the Burns unit, but also for Sally.
Thank you both so much for sharing your story with Outback and our listeners. From everyone on the R.M.Williams Outback team and from our listeners, I'm sure we wish you the best in your ongoing recovery. And thanks very much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.